Her zipper got stuck on the CEO's jacket at a crowded ball. Their awkward attempt to get free ended in a surprising kiss. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, what's the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to you in public? And at the end of the story, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy. The sound was small, a tiny metallic zzz, but to Kristen Brooks, it sounded like a guillotine dropping in a silent room. She froze. Behind her, the solid, expensive-feeling wall of muscle she had just accidentally backed into also froze. "Please," a deep, baritone voice rumbled from above her head, dripping with an icy annoyance that made her spine shiver. "Tell me you did not just attach yourself to me." Kristen squeezed her eyes shut, praying for the floor of the grand ballroom to open up and swallow her whole. Preferably right now. I think it's just a little snag," she whispered, terrified to move. "If I just wiggle it." She tried to take a subtle step forward. The fabric of the man's jacket didn't just pull, it yanked. He stumbled forward, she stumbled backward, and they did a clumsy, horrifying little tango step that drew the attention of the three nearest socialites. "Don't wiggle," the man commanded, his voice tight. Kristen slowly turned her head, craning her neck to see the face of the poor soul she was currently velcroed to. Her stomach dropped all the way to her rented heels. It wasn't just any man. It was him. William Covington. The CEO of Covington Enterprises, the billionaire ice king of New York, and most critically, her boss's 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 boss. The man who signed her paychecks, even if he didn't know she existed in the dusty basement archives of his company. He was looking down at her with eyes the color of cold steel, his jaw set hard enough to crack walnuts. He looked impeccable in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her entire college education. And currently, the zipper of her cheap sequin dress was eating the fine Italian wool of his jacket like a starving animal. "Mr. Covington," she squeaked. "Hi, big fan of your synergy." "Miss," he paused, waiting for a name he clearly didn't know. "Brooks," she supplied helpfully. "Kristen, from Archives. I'm the one who organizes the files by year." She realized she was babbling. "Look, I am so sorry. I was just trying to reach a crab puff and I don't care about the crab puff," he cut her off, his voice low and urgent. "I care about the fact that the board of directors is walking toward us right now, and I look like I'm wearing you as a backpack." Kristen looked up. Sure enough, a phalanx of serious-looking men in suits was approaching, led by a man who looked like he ate joy for breakfast. "Okay," Kristen hissed, panic overriding her fear of authority. "We need to move, now." "We can't move," William hissed back. "We're conjoined twins." "We waddle," she said firmly. "Like penguins. It's our only hope. Side by side, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, step." William Covington, a man who controlled shipping lanes and tech conglomerates, looked at her as if she had suggested they rob a bank. But as the board members closed in, he realized he had no choice. "If anyone sees this," he muttered, stepping in sync with her, "you're fired. I don't even know if I can fire you, but I'll find a way." "Less threatening, more walking," Kristen retorted, linking her arm through his to make their proximity look intentional rather than disastrous. "Smile, Covington. You're having a great time. You love parties. You love crab puffs." "I hate parties," he grumbled through a fake, terrifyingly stiff smile. "And I'm allergic to shellfish." They moved through the crowd in a bizarre three-legged race, dodging waiters and expensive floral arrangements. "So," Kristen said brightly to a passing dowager who was eyeing them suspiciously. "Lovely evening. Just escorting Mr. Covington to the balcony. For fresh air. He's feeling faint." "Faint," William whispered furiously. "I have never fainted in my life." "Well, you look pale," she shot back. "Probably the lack of oxygen from being so high up on your pedestal." He looked down at her, startled. People didn't talk to him like that. Usually they stammered or agreed or asked for money. They certainly didn't insult his posture while attached to his hip. "You have a sharp tongue for someone who is currently destroying a $5,000 suit," he noted. "And you're awfully whiny for a billionaire," she countered. "Left. Turn left." They stumbled out through the French doors onto the terrace. It was empty, thankfully. The cool night air hit their faces, but it did nothing to cool the heat of embarrassment radiating off them. "Okay," William said, exhaling sharply. "We're alone." Detach yourself. I'm trying, Kristen said, reaching behind her back. She twisted her body, trying to get a better angle on the zipper. It's stuck, like really stuck. Your wool is fuzzy. It got caught in the teeth. It is not fuzzy, he said, offended. It is high-grade merino. Well, your merino is eating my sequins. Stand still. She tugged. He grunted. The fabric pulled tight, bringing their bodies flush against each other. Suddenly, the comedy of the moment evaporated, replaced by a jolt of electricity that caught them both off guard. They were close, incredibly close. Kristen was pressed against his side, her hand behind her back, her face inches from his chest. She could smell him, crisp, clean, expensive cologne mixed with the faint scent of rain. He was warm, solid. William looked down at her. He had been so busy being annoyed that he hadn't actually looked at her. She wasn't wearing designer couture. Her dress was a simple, shimmering blue thing that looked like it had seen a few parties before this one. But her hair was loose and wild, escaping its pins, and her eyes were a warm honey brown, currently wide with frustration and something else. She wasn't a socialite. She wasn't a shark. She was real. Stop pulling, he said, his voice dropping an octave. You're making it worse. I have to pull, she whispered, breathless. Unless you want to spend the rest of your life attached to a filing clerk. There are worse fates, he murmured, the words slipping out before his brain could vet them. Kristen froze, her hand still on the zipper. What? I mean, he corrected quickly, clearing his throat. I need to get back to the meeting. He reached around her. Let me try. His arms encircled her. To anyone watching, it would look like an intimate embrace. He wasn't hugging her. He was trying to get leverage on the zipper. But his hands were on her back, his fingers brushing against her skin. His touch was firm, capable, and surprisingly gentle. You have terrible dexterity, she breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. I'm usually dealing with mergers, not wardrobe malfunctions, he muttered, his breath stirring the hair by her ear. Hold still. You're vibrating. I'm not vibrating. I'm shivering. It's cold. Here, he said. He shifted, turning his body to block the wind, effectively caging her against the stone railing of the balcony. Is it moving? She asked, her voice small. No, he admitted. It's really jammed. He looked at her. They were nose to nose now. The absurdity of the situation faded into the background, overtaken by the sheer, undeniable pull of gravity between them. He was the Ice King, the untouchable CEO. She was the girl from the basement. They shouldn't even be in the same room, let alone trapped in the same suit. But right now, in the moonlight, stripped of titles and pretenses, they were just a man and a woman, tangled together. You know, Kristen said, her voice trembling slightly, trying to diffuse the tension with her trademark snark. If you ruin this dress, I lose my deposit. It's $100. That's like $1 million in billionaire currency. William didn't laugh. He stared at her mouth. I'll buy you the dress store, he whispered. I don't want a store, she said, mesmerized by his eyes. I just want to get unstuck. Do you? He asked. The air crackled. He leaned in. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was a magnetic inevitability. She didn't pull away. She leaned in too, drawn to the heat, to the danger, to the man who was suddenly terrifyingly human. Just as their lips were about to touch, the French door swung open. William, darling? Are you out here? A high, piercing voice shattered the moment. William stiffened. Kristen's eyes went wide. It's Tiffany, William hissed. The woman my mother wants me to marry. The heiress? Kristen whispered, horrified. The one who throws wine at waiters? That's the one. If she sees us like this, Kristen said, panic rising, she'll skin me alive and wear me as a scarf. Tiffany's heels clicked on the stone. William, I know you're hiding. Daddy wants to discuss the merger. She was coming around the corner. There was nowhere to go. They were still zipped together. William looked at Kristen. He saw the fear in her eyes. He made a split-second decision. Forgive me, he whispered. He didn't let her finish. He crushed his mouth to hers. It wasn't a polite society kiss. It was a desperate, all-consuming camouflage. He angled his body, shielding her face from view, pressing her back against the railing. One hand tangled in her hair, the other gripped her waist, holding her tight. And then something happened. The ruse melted away. Kristen gasped against his lips, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss. It was electric. It was messy. It was the most shocking, earth-shattering thing either of them had ever felt. He tasted like champagne and power. She tasted like cherries and trouble. For a moment, the zipper didn't matter. Tiffany didn't matter. The board didn't matter. There was only the heat of his body, the roughness of his jaw against her skin, and the wild, frantic beating of their hearts. "Oh my God," Tiffany's voice shrieked from 10 feet away. "William, you animal." William didn't stop. He couldn't. He was lost in the feeling of finally touching something real. "I am leaving," Tiffany announced, her voice trembling with rage. "And I am taking Daddy's money with me." Her heels clicked away, furious and fast. The door slammed shut. William broke the kiss, breathing hard, his forehead resting against Kristen's. They were both trembling. "She's gone," he rasped. Kristen blinked, her eyes dazed, her lips swollen. She stared at him, looking like she had just been struck by lightning. You kissed me." It was a tactical diversion," he stammered, stepping back, his composure shattered. "To protect your identity." "Tactical," she repeated, breathless. "Right, very strategic." She looked down. In the frenzy of the moment, the zipper had miraculously, impossibly popped free. The tension, or maybe just the movement, had done what 10 minutes of struggling couldn't. She was free. She took a step back, putting distance between them. The reality of what had just happened crashed down on her. She had just made out with the CEO, the Ice King, the man who could fire her with a snap of his fingers. "I have to go," she said, panic seizing her chest. "Wait," William said, reaching for her. "Your name. Tell me your name again. I was distracted." "It's better if you don't know," she said, backing away toward the garden stairs. "Let's just pretend this glitch never happened." "Glitch?" he asked, hurt flashing in his eyes. "Is that what that was?" "Yes," she said, trying to convince herself. "A system error. Goodbye, Mr. Covington." She turned and ran. She ran down the stone steps, kicking off her heels so she could move faster. She ran through the manicured gardens, her blue dress flying behind her like a banner of retreat. William stood on the balcony watching her go. He touched his lips, which still burned with the memory of hers. He looked down at his jacket. The side was ripped, a small, jagged tear where her zipper had been. Most men would be furious. It was a $5,000 suit. William Covington smiled. He touched the rip, tracing the rough edge. "Brooks," he whispered to the empty night, searching his memory for the name she had given him before the world turned upside down. Kristen Brooks, from Archives. He didn't care about the board meeting. He didn't care about Tiffany. He didn't care about his ruined jacket. He had a new objective, a new merger to pursue. And for the first time in his life, he didn't want a contract. He wanted the girl with the cheap dress and the sharp tongue who kissed like she had nothing to lose. He pulled out his phone. "Arthur," he said, his voice ringing with a new, terrifying energy. "Cancel my morning. I'm going to the basement." The Archives Department of Covington Enterprises was not designed for human comfort. It was designed for paper. Miles of it. Located in Sub-Basement 3, it smelled of dust, old toner, and the crushed dreams of interns past. It was Kristen Brooks's kingdom, and she liked it that way. It was quiet, it was organized, and it was approximately 40 floors below the CEO's office. Or so she thought. At 9:05 a.m., the heavy metal door to the archives swung open with a rusty groan that sounded like a dying whale. Kristen looked up from a stack of tax returns from 1998. Standing in the doorway, illuminated by the flickering fluorescent light like a corporate angel of death, was William Covington. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo this morning. He was wearing a navy suit that was so sharp it could probably cut glass. He looked out of place, ridiculous and devastatingly handsome against the backdrop of beige filing cabinets. "Mr. Covington," Kristen said, her voice betraying none of the panic currently doing cartwheels in her chest. "Did you get lost on your way to the helipad? It's usually up." William stepped into the room, looking around with a mixture of fascination and horror. "This is where you work?" he asked, his voice echoing in the silent space. "It's a bunker." "It's an archive," she corrected, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "We keep the secrets down here. And the spiders. Mostly spiders." He walked toward her desk, navigating the maze of boxes with the grace of a panther stalking prey in a cardboard jungle. "I'm not here for secrets, Miss Brooks. I'm here for you," Kristen snorted. "That's a terrible line. Did you get that from a rom-com or a subpoena?" I'm serious, he said, stopping in front of her desk. He placed a small velvet box on top of a stack of invoices. I brought you something. Kristen stared at the box. It looked like a jewelry box. Panic flared. Was he trying to buy her silence? If that's a bribe, she said, narrowing her eyes, I'm not cheap. I require at least a dental plan with zero deductible. It's not a bribe, he said, looking offended. Open it. She reached out tentatively and flipped the lid. Inside wasn't a diamond necklace or a pair of earrings. It was a zipper. A single, heavy-duty, industrial-grade metal zipper. She looked up at him, confused. A zipper? I had my tailor source it, he explained earnestly. It's the strongest zipper on the market. Military grade. Guaranteed not to snag on merino wool. Kristen stared at him. Then she stared at the zipper. Then she burst out laughing. It was a loud, unladylike cackle that bounced off the metal cabinets. You brought me a tactical zipper? She wheezed. I solved the problem, he said, looking pleased with himself. That's what I do. I identify structural weaknesses and I implement solutions. You are absurd, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. Completely ridiculous. Does that mean you'll have dinner with me? He asked, leaning forward, his blue eyes intense. The laughter died in her throat. He was close again. Too close. The memory of the kiss on the balcony rushed back, hot and dizzying. Mr. Covington, she started, retreating into professionalism. William, he corrected. William, she tested the name. It felt dangerous. We can't have dinner. You're the CEO. I'm the girl who organizes files by decade. There's a power imbalance here that HR would have a field day with. I don't care about HR, he said dismissively. I own HR. That's exactly the problem, she exclaimed. You own everything. You walk in here, you kiss me, you bring me industrial hardware, and you expect me to just swoon? Are you swooning? He asked, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Even a little? No, she lied. I'm working, and you are disturbing the filing system. I can help, he offered, taking off his jacket and rolling up his sleeves. His forearms were distracting. Very distracting. You? She scoffed. File? You probably have people to turn pages for you. I built this company, he said, grabbing a stack of papers. I know how to file. He looked at the paper in his hand. Where does Invoices 2004 go? In the shredder, she said. Those are duplicates. He walked to the shredder and fed the paper in. It jammed immediately. A loud grinding noise filled the room, followed by the smell of burning motor. What did you do? She shrieked, running over. I optimized the feed rate, he said, looking guilty. I put the whole stack in at once. It's a shredder, not a wood chipper, she groaned, unplugging the machine. Great. Now I have to call maintenance. Do you know how long the wait list is for basement repairs? I'll be retired by the time they get here. I can fix it, he said, reaching for the machine. Don't touch it, she commanded, swatting his hand away. You have done enough optimizing for one day. Please, for the love of all that is holy and organized, just sit down. She pointed to a rickety folding chair in the corner. William Covington, billionaire titan of industry, sat down obediently. The chair squeaked in protest. This chair is structurally unsound, he observed. It builds character, she muttered, trying to pry the jammed paper out of the shredder with a letter opener. Kristen, he said softly. She paused, looking over her shoulder. He was watching her, not with impatience or annoyance, but with a look of pure, unadulterated fascination. What? She asked, her defenses weakening. I can't stop thinking about the balcony, he admitted. About the glitch. It was a mistake, she said, turning back to the machine, her heart pounding. Was it? He asked. He stood up and walked over to her. Because from where I was standing, it felt like the only real thing that's happened to me in 10 years. He was behind her now. She could feel his heat. She stood up slowly, turning to face him. They were in the cramped aisle between Tax Records 1990 and HR Complaints 2005. It wasn't a romantic balcony, it was a dusty basement, and yet the air was crackling again. You don't even know me, she whispered. I know you're brave, he said, taking a step closer. I know you're funny. I know you're not afraid of me, and I know you taste like cherries. She swallowed hard. You can't just come down here and disrupt my life, William. I don't want to disrupt it, he said, his hand reaching out to tuck a stray curl of hair behind her ear. His touch sent a shiver straight to her toes. I want to be part of it. You don't fit here, she said, gesturing to the dusty room. Look at you, you're a Ferrari parked in a junkyard. Then take me for a test drive, he murmured, leaning in. Before she could answer, before she could decide whether to kiss him or kick him out, the heavy metal door banged open again. Kristen, are you down here? The coffee machine on the 4th floor exploded, and I need the manual for the 1987 model. It was Dave, the head of maintenance. A man who wore a tool belt like a second skin and had zero respect for corporate hierarchy. He stopped dead when he saw them. William, shirtless, sleeves rolled up, hand in Kristen's hair. Kristen, looking flushed and guilty. Whoa, Dave said, blinking. Sorry, didn't know you had company. He peered at William. Hey, aren't you the guy from the lobby photo, the one with the big tie? William straightened up, instantly regaining his CEO composure, though his ears were slightly pink. William Covington, he said, extending a hand. I was just conducting a surprise inspection of the archival facilities. Dave looked at the jammed shredder, then at the velvet box with the zipper on the desk, then at William's rolled-up sleeves. Right, Dave said, grinning. Inspection. Is that what the kids are calling it these days? Kristen groaned and put her face in her hands. Dave, just take the manual. Shelf B, 3rd box. Dave grabbed the manual. You kids have fun, he said with a wink. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which isn't much. He left, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoed like a judge's gavel. Well, William said into the silence. That went well. He's going to tell everyone, Kristen moaned. By lunch, the entire building will think we're having a sordid affair in the basement. Let them talk, William said. Ideally, it will scare off any other suitors. I don't have suitors, she exclaimed. I work in a basement. Good, he said. Then I have no competition. He checked his watch, a timepiece that probably cost more than Dave's entire life savings. I have a board meeting in 10 minutes to discuss the merger I ignored last night. He looked at her, his expression serious. I'm not giving up, Kristen. I'm going to keep coming down here. I'm going to keep bringing you hardware. I'm going to keep jamming your shredder until you agree to have dinner with me. That sounds like a threat, she said, fighting a smile. It's a promise, he corrected. He picked up his jacket. 7 o'clock, tonight? I'll pick you up. I didn't say yes, she called after him. He paused at the door, looking back with a smirk that was pure, devastating trouble. You didn't say no. And then he was gone, leaving Kristen alone with a broken shredder, a military-grade zipper, and a heart that was beating way, way too fast. She looked at the velvet box. She picked up the zipper. It was heavy. Solid. Idiot, she whispered, a smile finally breaking through. She put the zipper in her pocket. Upstairs, 40 floors above, William Covington walked into his boardroom. He was disheveled. He smelled faintly of basement dust. He had a smudge of toner on his cheek. Gentlemen, he announced, sitting at the head of the table with a grin that terrified everyone present. Let's make some money. I have a date to pay for. At 6:55 p.m., Kristen was standing outside her apartment building in Queens, debating whether she should run away or throw up. She had opted for a compromise, pacing aggressively while chewing a hangnail. She wasn't wearing sequins tonight. She was wearing her first date armor, jeans that made her butt look amazing, or so her best friend swore, a silk blouse she'd found at a thrift store, and her trusty leather jacket. If she was going to date a billionaire, she was going to do it looking like herself. Not a discount version of Tiffany. At exactly 7 p.m., a sleek, black limousine purred around the corner. It was longer than her apartment. It stopped right in front of her, looking ridiculously out of place next to the overflowing dumpster and Mrs. Hernandez's plastic flamingos. The driver got out to open the door, but William beat him to it. He stepped out onto the cracked sidewalk and Kristen felt her breath hitch. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that looked softer than a cloud. He looked approachable, almost normal. If normal people looked like Greek gods on their day off. Hi, he said, his eyes sweeping over her with an appreciation that made her knees weak. You look tactical. It's leather, she said, crossing her arms to stop from fidgeting. It provides superior abrasion resistance in case this date crashes and burns. He laughed. Optimistic as ever. Get in. She slid into the back of the limo. It smelled of new leather and money. There was a bottle of champagne in a bucket. Where are we going? She asked as the car pulled away. Le Bernardin, per se? Somewhere with tiny portions and judgy waiters? I told you I'd pick you up, he said, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. I didn't say I was picking the restaurant. Tonight, you're the boss. Take me to your leader. Kristen blinked. You want me to choose? I want to see your world, he said simply. I've spent enough time in mine. A slow, mischievous smile spread across her face. You're going to regret this, Covington. I doubt it, he said, taking a sip of his drink. I have a very high tolerance for regret. 30 minutes later, the limo pulled up to Mama Lou's dumpling shack in Chinatown. It was loud, crowded, and smelled like heaven, garlic and chili oil. William looked out the window at the line of people snaking down the block. Is this a culinary institution? It's the best soup dumplings in the city, Kristen declared. But there's a catch, no reservations. We wait in line like plebeians. William looked at the line. He looked at his driver, who looked ready to call in a SWAT team. Okay, William said, opening the door. Let's wait. The sight of William Covington standing in line for dumplings was a spectacle. He tried to stand with his usual commanding posture, but kept getting jostled by tourists and grandmothers with shopping carts. Relax, Kristen whispered, nudging him. You look like you're guarding the crown jewels. Slouch a little. Look bored. I am not bored, he said, eyeing a woman eating a skewer of questionable meat. I am fascinated. Is that a chicken foot? Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to, she advised. When they finally got a table, a tiny, wobbly thing in the corner shared with a stranger reading a newspaper, William looked like he had just conquered a small nation. We made it, he announced, sitting down on a plastic stool. Now comes the hard part, Kristen said, as the waiter slammed a steamer basket of dumplings onto the table. You have to eat them without scalding your tongue or spraying broth all over your cashmere. It's an art form. She demonstrated, biting a small hole, slurping the soup, then eating the dumpling. William watched her with intense concentration. He picked up his chopsticks, surprisingly competent, and lifted a dumpling. Careful, she warned. It's hot lava inside. He took a bite. A jet of hot soup squirted out, missing his shirt by millimeters but hitting the stranger's newspaper. Oh, William said, eyes wide. The stranger lowered his paper, glaring. My apologies, William said smoothly. I was unprepared for the hydraulic pressure. It's soup, buddy, the stranger grunted. Eat it, don't analyze it. Kristen dissolved into giggles. You're a hazard, Covington, a public safety hazard. I'm learning, he said, popping the rest of the dumpling in his mouth. His eyes lit up. Oh, that is exceptional. Told you, she smiled. They ate their way through 3 baskets of dumplings, spicy noodles, and scallion pancakes. Between bites, they talked. Real talk. Not about mergers or filing systems, but about them. She told him about growing up in Queens, about her dream of being a writer that got sidelined by bills and practicality. He told her about the pressure of being a Covington, about how he had played the cello for 10 years but quit because his father said it wasn't a leadership skill. You play the cello? She asked, delighted. That's so brooding. Very, Mr. Darcy. I was terrible, he admitted, but I liked it. It was the only time I didn't have to talk. You should play again, she said softly. The world could use less talking. He looked at her, his guard completely down. In the chaotic, noisy restaurant, under the harsh fluorescent lights, he looked younger, happier. Maybe I will, he said, if you promise to let me read your writing. She blushed. It's just stories, silly stuff. I like stories, he said, especially the ones with happy endings. The mood was perfect, intimate, real. And then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face hardened instantly. The mask slammed back into place. I have to take this, he said, his voice clipped. It's my mother. Go ahead, Kristen said, feeling the chill. He answered at the table, not bothering to step away. Mother. Yes, I'm at dinner. No, not with Tiffany. No, I don't care what the gala committee thinks. His jaw tightened. I am not acting out. I am eating a dumpling. Yes, a dumpling. Goodbye. He hung up and shoved the phone into his pocket. The air around him was freezing. Trouble in paradise? Kristen asked tentatively. My mother doesn't believe in paradise, he said dryly. She believes in strategic alliances. Apparently, my departure from the gala with a mystery woman caused quite a stir. Tiffany is threatening to sue for emotional distress. Emotional distress? Kristen laughed incredulously. She barely knows you. She knows my portfolio, he said bitterly. That's enough for a marriage in my world." He looked at Kristen, really looked at her. "I hate it," he whispered. "I hate the game. I hate the expectations. I hate that I'm sitting here with the most interesting woman I've ever met and I'm worrying about press releases." Kristen reached across the sticky table and took his hand. His skin was warm. "Then stop worrying," she said. "You're not the CEO right now. You're just William, the guy who squirted soup on a stranger." He smiled, a small crooked thing. "Just William," he repeated. "I like that." "Come on," she said, standing up. "Let's get out of here. I want to show you something." They walked out into the cool night air. Kristen led him down the street to a small park overlooking the bridge. It was quiet, the city lights reflecting on the water. "This is my spot," she said, leaning against the railing. "When the archives get too dusty, or life gets too loud, I come here." William stood beside her. He wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her. The wind blew her hair across her face, and he reached out to tuck it back. His fingers lingered on her cheek. "Kristen," he said, his voice rough, "I don't know what I'm doing. I have a board meeting tomorrow that could determine the fate of 3,000 employees. My mother is probably hiring a private investigator to find you. My life is a minefield." "Sounds exhausting," she whispered, leaning into his touch. "It is," he agreed. "But when I'm with you, it's quiet. For the first time in my life, the noise stops." He leaned in. This time, there was no Zipper, no Tiffany, no panic, just gravity. He kissed her. It tasted of garlic and chili oil and longing. It wasn't the desperate, frantic kiss of the balcony. It was slow, deliberate. It was a question and an answer all at once. Kristen melted against him, her hands bunching in his soft sweater. He felt solid, real, and terrifyingly essential. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. "Wow," she said, her voice shaky. "The dumplings were good, but that?" "Better than the dumplings?" he asked, a smudge of hope in his eyes. "Top 5, she teased. "Maybe top 3. He laughed, pulling her into a hug. He buried his face in her neck, breathing her in. "I'll take top 3. They stayed like that for a long time, holding on to the quiet in the middle of the city. But as they walked back to the limo, Kristen noticed something. A black sedan parked across the street. The window was rolled down just a crack. A camera lens glinted in the street lamp light. She froze. "William," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "Don't look now, but I think we have an audience." William stiffened. He didn't look. He just guided her quickly toward the car, his body shielding hers. "Get in," he said, his voice low and urgent. As the limo door closed, a flash went off. Inside the safety of the car, William looked grim. "I'm sorry," he said. "I tried to keep this private." "Who was that?" Kristen asked, her heart racing. "Paparazzi," he said. "Or worse, my mother's security detail." He looked at her with a mix of apology and fierce determination. "The game has changed, Kristen. They know you exist now, and they're going to come for you." "Let them come," she said, surprising herself with her own bravery. "I survived Sub-Basement 3. I can handle a few photographers." "It's not the photographers I'm worried about," he said darkly, taking her hand and kissing the knuckles. "It's the sharks. And they smell blood." The car sped away into the night, carrying them away from the quiet park and straight into the storm. The honeymoon phase of the glitch was over. Reality, expensive, ruthless, and complicated, was about to crash the party. The next morning, Kristen arrived at the basement archives expecting dust and silence. Instead, she found a fruit basket the size of a small car sitting on her desk. It was an aggressive fruit basket. The pineapples looked threatening. The melons were judgmental. And right in the center, nestled between 2 perfectly polished apples, was a card on heavy, cream-colored stock. "Miss Brooks, we assume this concludes your interaction with my son. Please enjoy these pears. Eleanora Covington." Kristen stared at the card. "She's trying to buy me off with pears?" "They're calmus pears," a voice said from the doorway. "Very rare, very expensive, and a classic passive-aggressive power move." William was leaning against the doorframe. He looked tired, but impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. He also looked like he wanted to set the fruit basket on fire. "Your mother sent me a bribe," Kristen said, holding up a pear. "I'm insulted. I'm worth at least a edible arrangement dipped in chocolate." "She's escalating," William said, walking over and picking up the card with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. "She knows. The photos from last night are everywhere. Mystery brunette in budget leather jacket captures CEO's heart. Budget leather? Kristen gasped. That jacket is vintage. The press has no taste. The press is irrelevant, William said, tossing the card into the trash. My mother is the problem. She's called an emergency board meeting. She wants to discuss my erratic behavior. Eating dumplings is erratic? In her world, eating anything that isn't foam or reduction is a sign of mental instability. He sighed, running a hand through his perfect hair. I'm sorry, Kristen. I didn't want to drag you into this circus. Hey, she said, poking him in the chest with the pear. I walked into that limo willingly, and I ate the dumplings. I'm an accessory to the crime. He smiled, a tired but genuine smile. So, what do we do? Do you want out? I can have security escort you out the back door. You can disappear. I'll send you a better fruit basket. With chocolate. Kristen looked at him. She looked at the ridiculous fruit basket. She thought about the way he had looked at her in the park, the way he had listened to her stories. She thought about his terrible cello playing and his ketchup obsession. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was William. And he was alone in a tank full of sharks. No, she said firmly. I don't run, especially not from women who weaponize produce. She took a bite of the pear. It was delicious, which was annoying. We fight. Fight? William asked, intrigued. How? Hostile takeover of the fruit supplier? No, she said, her eyes gleaming with a plan. We give them exactly what they're afraid of. They think I'm a disaster? Let's be a disaster, a loud, unrefined, glorious disaster. I'm listening, he said, leaning closer. Your mother wants you to marry Tiffany, right? The perfect, poised, boring socialite. Correct. So tonight, at the company charity auction, she said, pointing the half-eaten pear at him, you're not bringing a mystery woman. You're bringing Kristen from Archives. And Kristen from Archives is going to be a lot. Define a lot, he said, looking both terrified and excited. I'm going to wear the wrong colors. I'm going to laugh too loud. I'm going to ask the board members about their tax evasion strategies. I'm going to be the nightmare they can't wake up from. William started to laugh. It started as a chuckle and grew into a full-blown, head-thrown-back laugh that filled the basement. You want to troll my mother? I want to show her that her son makes his own choices, she said softly. And if she doesn't like it, she can eat a pear. He looked at her with such intense admiration that she almost forgot to breathe. You are terrifying, he said, and magnificent. It's a deal. Operation Nightmare Date is a go. That night, the Covington charity auction was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was a black-tie affair, stiff with tension and old money. Eleanora Covington held court in the center, a woman made of ice and diamonds, flanked by a smug-looking Tiffany. He'll be here, Eleanora said coolly, and he'll be alone. William knows his duty. Just then, the doors opened. William walked in. He looked dashing as always, but on his arm was not a shrinking violet. It was Kristen. She was wearing a dress that was a riot of color, bright yellow silk that clashed beautifully with the somber black and white of the room. It was vintage, it was bold, and it was fabulous. She had piled her hair up in a messy, artful bun and wore lipstick the color of a fire engine. Mother, William boomed, his voice carrying across the silent room. You remember Kristen, from the wardrobe incident. Kristen waved enthusiastically. Hi, Mrs. C. Thanks for the fruit. The pears were great for my digestion. A collective gasp went through the room. Eleanora looked like she had just swallowed a lemon whole. William, she hissed as they approached. What is the meaning of this? Just bringing my +1, William said, beaming. Kristen was just telling me about her theory on the structural integrity of the canapes. They're a bit soggy, Mrs. C., Kristen confided loudly. I'd have a word with the caterer. Maybe threaten to sue? That usually works, right? Tiffany stepped forward, looking like she smelled something bad. William, really, this is a charity event. For orphans. I love orphans, Kristen exclaimed. I mean, not that they're orphans, that's sad, but helping them. Yay! She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Cheers to the orphans. William had to turn away to hide his shaking shoulders. She was perfect. She was chaos incarnate. So, Kristen said, turning to a horrified board member, you're the CFO, right? Bob? Can I call you Bob? I have some questions about the expense reports from 2003. Why did we buy a yacht listed as office supplies? Bob choked on his drink. Excuse me? Just curious, she chirped. Transparency is key, right, Bob? For the next hour, they were a whirlwind. Kristen charmed the waitstaff, horrified the dowages, and engaged the board members in conversations that made them sweat. William stuck by her side, playing the part of the besotted, oblivious lover to perfection. But every time he looked at her, the look in his eyes wasn't acting. He was having the time of his life. "You're doing great," he whispered in her ear as they pretended to admire a Ming vase. "My mother's left eye is twitching. That hasn't happened since I dropped out of piano lessons." "I'm just getting started," she whispered back. "Watch this." She walked over to the auction podium. The item up for bid was a weekend at a private island. The bidding was stagnant. 5,000, a voice called out. 6,000, Kristen raised her hand high. $50 and a really good recipe for lasagna, she shouted. The auctioneer froze. The room went silent. "I beg your pardon?" the auctioneer asked. "It's a great recipe," Kristen insisted. "My grandma's secret sauce. Priceless, really." William stepped in, his face serious. "She's right. It's excellent lasagna. I'll back that bid with $10,000. The room erupted in whispers. William Covington backing a lasagna bid? It was madness. It was anarchy. "Sold," the auctioneer yelled, terrified to argue. Kristen turned to William, beaming. "We won. We're going to an island. And eating lasagna," he added, grinning. Eleanor Covington had seen enough. She marched over, her diamonds clinking aggressively. "William, a word, now." She dragged him into a side alcove, away from the prying eyes. Kristen stayed back, winking at a stunned Tiffany. "This charade ends now," Eleanor hissed. "You are embarrassing the family name. You are embarrassing me." "I'm happy, Mother," William said, his voice calm and steely. "For the first time in years. Kristen is smart, she's funny, and she's real. Unlike everyone else in this room." "She is a clerk," Eleanor spat. "She belongs in the basement. She belongs wherever she wants to be," William said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "And if you insult her again, I will walk out of this company and take my shares with me." Eleanor paled. "You wouldn't." "Try me." He turned and walked back to the party. He found Kristen by the dessert table, critiquing the fondue fountain. "How did it go?" she asked, handing him a chocolate-covered strawberry. "I think I just declared war," he said, taking a bite. "It was exhilarating." "Good," she said, "because I think I just accidentally invited the entire board to a karaoke night at a dive bar in Queens." William laughed, loud and free. "I can't wait. I do a terrible rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody." But the night wasn't over. As they left the museum, hand in hand, feeling victorious, a flash of light blinded them. Not a camera, a car headlight. A sleek silver sports car screeched to a halt at the curb. The window rolled down. A man sat inside, handsome in a slick, predatory way. "William," the man called out, his voice smooth as oil. "Leaving so soon? The party was just getting started." William stiffened, his grip on Kristen's hand tightening painfully. "Sterling," he said, his voice ice-cold. "Who's?" Kristen whispered. "Sterling Vance," William said through gritted teeth. "My rival and my cousin." Sterling looked at Kristen, his eyes raking over her yellow dress with a smirk. "And who is this delight? The court jester?" "Careful, Sterling," William warned. "Just having fun, cousin." Sterling laughed. "By the way, I heard about the board meeting. Rumor has it they're reconsidering your position. Something about instability? Might want to check your email." He revved the engine and sped off, leaving the smell of burnt rubber and dread in the air. William pulled out his phone. He checked his email. His face went white. "What is it?" Kristen asked, the joy of the evening evaporating. "They're calling a vote of no confidence," he whispered. "My mother. She actually did it. She's trying to oust me as CEO." He looked at Kristen, his eyes filled with a sudden, terrified realization. "It's because of tonight. Because of us." "No," Kristen said firmly, grabbing his lapels. "It's because they're scared. They're scared because you're not playing by their rules anymore. You're playing by yours." "I could lose the company, Kristen. My grandfather's legacy." "Then we fight," she said. "We fought the fruit basket. We fought the auction. We can fight a board meeting." "We?" he asked, looking at her as if she were a lifeline. "We," she confirmed. "I have a military-grade zipper and a lasagna recipe." "What do they have? Boring suits and bad attitudes?" She took his hand. "Come on, CEO, let's go strategize. I know a 24-hour diner with great coffee and terrible lighting. It's perfect for plotting world domination." William looked at her, This girl in the yellow dress who had turned his life upside down and was now offering to help him put it back together. He realized then that losing the company wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Losing her would be. "Lead the way, Miss Brooks," he said. "I'm right behind you." The War Room was a booth at Joe's Diner in Queens. It smelled of bacon grease and cleaning fluid. William, still in his tuxedo, looked like a James Bond villain who had fallen on hard times. Kristen, in her yellow dress, looked like a runaway Disney princess. The table was covered in napkins, covered in scribbles. "Okay," Kristen said, slapping a French fry onto the table for emphasis. "Let's review. Your mother wants you out, your cousin Sterling wants your job, and the board thinks you're unstable because you backed a lasagna bid." It was a gesture of dominance, William mumbled into his coffee. "Lasagna represents family values. It represents pasta, William. Focus. They're calling the vote tomorrow morning. We have 12 hours. "I need to call my lawyers," William said, reaching for his phone. "I need to draft a press release. I need to—" "Stop," Kristen commanded, taking the phone from his hand. "Lawyers take weeks. We have hours. You can't out-lawyer them. They wrote the bylaws. You have to outsmart them." "How?" he asked, looking genuinely lost. "I'm a CEO. My superpower is delegating." "My superpower is knowing where the bodies are buried," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Or at least where the old contracts are filed." William stared at her. "The archives." "Sub-basement 3, she confirmed. "I've been down there for 5 years, William. I've read things. Boring things, but sometimes interesting things." "Like what?" "Like the original charter of the company," she said. "From your grandfather's time, before everything went digital. There's a clause. I remember seeing it because it was handwritten in the margins, something about founder's intent." William sat up straighter. "Founder's intent? That's a myth, a corporate legend." "It's in box 402, aisle C, bottom shelf," she recited, "next to the Christmas party photos from 1982. You memorized the location?" It was a slow Tuesday. William looked at her with awe. "You are the most terrifyingly competent person I have ever met." "Flattery will get you everywhere," she grinned. "But we have a problem. The building is on lockdown. Your mother probably deactivated your keycard." "We can't get in," he said, deflating. "Not through the front door," she agreed. "But remember Dave? From maintenance? The guy who thinks we're having an affair? The guy who owes me a favor because I didn't report him for running a fantasy football league on the company servers," she corrected. "He has a master key, and he works the night shift." William's eyes widened. "You want to break into my own company?" "I want to liberate some documents," she said. "Are you in, or are you going to let your cousin Sterling turn your office into a tanning salon?" William looked at the grease-stained napkin. He looked at Kristen, fierce and brilliant in her thrift store dress. He thought about his grandfather's legacy. "I'm in," he said, "but I'm driving." At 2 a.m., the service entrance of Covington Tower opened with a soft click. Dave stood there, holding a flashlight and looking amused. "Well, well," he whispered. "The lovebirds return, and in black tie no less. Classy." "It's a covert operation, Dave," Kristen whispered back. "Don't make it weird." "Whatever you say, boss," Dave said, handing her a key ring. "Archives are unlocked. Watch out for the rats. They've been unionizing." They slipped inside. The building was silent, a sleeping giant. They took the service elevator down, the numbers counting backward. Sub-basement 3 was freezing. The fluorescent lights flickered to life, illuminating the endless rows of cabinets. "Okay," Kristen said, kicking off her heels. "Box 402, aisle C." They ran. William, following her lead, felt a surge of adrenaline he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't a board meeting. This was a treasure hunt. They found the box. Kristen ripped the lid off. Dust motes danced in the air. "Here," she said, pulling out a yellowed, fragile-looking document. "The 1955 charter." She flipped through the pages carefully. "Here. Look." William leaned in, his shoulder brushing hers. He squinted at the faded handwriting in the margin. "In the event of a dispute regarding leadership continuity, the CEO retains veto power over the board, provided he can demonstrate active engagement in the company's core values of innovation and community service." William read it twice. "My grandfather wrote that?" "Looks like his signature," Kristen said. "It's a loophole, William. A founder's veto. They can't fire you without proving you've abandoned the company's values." And I haven't, he said, his mind racing. The charity auction, the lasagna bid, it was community service. Exactly, she laughed. Your incompetence saved you. Hey, he protested, but he was grinning. It was strategic incompetence. Suddenly, the lights went out. Pitch black. Dave? Kristen called out. Silence. Then the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the elevator. That's not Dave, William whispered, grabbing her hand. A beam of a flashlight cut through the darkness, blinding them. Well, well, a smooth voice echoed, caught in the act. It was Sterling. Of course it was. Sterling, William said, stepping in front of Kristen. What are you doing here? Security alert, Sterling drawled, the flashlight beam playing over them. Intruders in the basement. I came to investigate personally. And look what I found. The disgraced CEO and his little helper. Stealing company property? It's my property, William said. It's my grandfather's charter. It's paper, Sterling scoffed. And in about 5 minutes, it's going to be confetti. 2 security guards stepped out of the shadows behind him. Big ones. Hand it over, William, Sterling commanded. Don't make this messy. William felt the weight of the document in his hand. It was his salvation. It was his legacy. But then he felt Kristen trembling behind him. She was brave, but she was terrified. If this went south, if they called the police, she would be the one in handcuffs. She was the employee breaking in. He was the owner. She had everything to lose. If I give it to you, William said, his voice calm, you let her go. She walks out of here. No questions, no police, no firing. William, no, Kristen hissed. Quiet, he ordered gently. He looked at Sterling. That's the deal. The paper for the girl. Sterling laughed. You really are sentimental, aren't you? Fine, I don't care about the file clerk. She's irrelevant. She's not irrelevant, William said, his voice hard. She's the smartest person in this building. But yes, let her go. He held out the document. Sterling snatched it, a triumphant sneer on his face. He pulled out a lighter. A pleasure doing business, cousin, Sterling said. He lit the corner of the paper. The dry, old parchment caught fire instantly. William watched his grandfather's handwriting turn to ash. He watched his leverage disappear. Go, he said to Kristen, not looking at her. Run. I'm not leaving you, she said, grabbing his arm. Go, he shouted, pushing her toward the door. That was the deal. Sterling waved a hand at the guards. Escort the lady out. And then, escort Mr. Covington to the street. He's trespassing. The guards grabbed Kristen. She fought, kicking and screaming, but they dragged her toward the elevator. William, she screamed. I'll be fine, he called back, standing tall in the darkness, watching the fire burn out in Sterling's hand. Just go. The elevator doors closed, cutting off her voice. William was alone with Sterling and the ashes of his victory. You lost, William, Sterling said, dropping the charred remains on the floor and crushing them with his expensive shoe. Tomorrow morning, the board votes. And your history. Maybe, William said, straightening his tie. But I think I just won something much more important. What? The moral high ground? Sterling laughed. That doesn't buy yachts, cousin. No, William said, thinking of the way Kristen had looked at him, the way she had fought for him. It buys loyalty. Real loyalty. Something you'll never have. Sterling signaled the remaining guard. Get him out of here, and William, if you try to come back before the vote, I'll have you arrested. William was escorted out the service entrance, thrown onto the cold pavement of the alley. He picked himself up, dusting off his tuxedo. He was tired. He was beaten. He had lost his company. But as he looked up at the towering skyscraper that bore his name, he didn't feel defeated. He felt free. He pulled out his phone. He had one call to make. Not to a lawyer. Not to a banker. Dave? He said when the maintenance man answered. Yeah, it's William. Listen, did you happen to make a digital copy of that manual you borrowed last week? The coffee machine manual? Dave asked, confused. No, William said, a slow smile spreading across his face. The other one. The one in box 402. The one Kristen scanned into the system 6 months ago because she's the most organized person on the planet. There was a pause. The sound of typing. Yeah, Dave said. It's right here. Charter 1955 backup.pdf. Why? William laughed, a loud, triumphant laugh that echoed in the empty alley. Print it, Dave. Print 50 copies, and bring them to the boardroom at 8 a.m. We're going to have a reading circle. He hung up. He hadn't lost. He had just played a very, very risky gambit. And thanks to Kristen, thanks to her obsession with backups and her brilliance, he still had an ace up his sleeve. Now he just had to find her and apologize for pushing her into an elevator. And maybe, just maybe, ask her to run a company with him. Because there was no way in hell he was doing this without her ever again. At 8 a.m., the boardroom of Covington Enterprises smelled of fear and expensive coffee. Eleanora Covington sat at the head of the table, looking like a statue carved from ice. Sterling Vance sat to her right, preening like a peacock who had just won a beauty pageant. The agenda is simple, Eleanora announced. A vote of no confidence in William Covington, immediate termination, appointment of Sterling Vance as interim CEO. Seconded, a nervous board member squeaked. All in favor? Wait. The doors banged open. William strode in. He was wearing the same tuxedo from the night before, now rumpled and missing a button. He hadn't shaved. He looked exhausted, wild, and incredibly dangerous. William, Eleanora said, wrinkling her nose. You're trespassing. Security! Security works for me, Mother, William said, tossing a stack of papers onto the table. They landed with a heavy thud. Or rather, they work for the charter. Sterling laughed. We burned that charter, cousin. Remember, it was very dramatic. Lots of smoke. You burned a copy, William corrected, grabbing a donut from the catering tray and taking a huge bite. You burned the original hard copy. A sentimental loss, certainly. But you forgot one thing. He pointed to the door. You forgot who you were dealing with. The door opened again. Kristen Brooks walked in. She was still wearing her yellow dress, though she had added a oversized Covington maintenance hoodie over it. She was carrying a laptop and looked ready to murder someone with a spreadsheet. Good morning, she chirped, marching to the projector screen. Sorry to interrupt. Urgent archival update. Who is this person? Eleanora demanded. Why is the basement girl here? This is the person who digitized the entire archive 6 months ago, William said, his mouth full of donut, including the 1955 charter. Kristen, if you would. Kristen plugged in her laptop. A massive image of the burnt document appeared on the screen, clear as day. Section 4, paragraph 2, she recited. The founder's veto. It's legally binding, notarized, and backed up on 3 separate servers. Cloud, physical, and Dave's personal iPad. You can't delete it. The board members leaned in, squinting at the screen. It says, he can veto the board, one whispered. Provided he demonstrates active engagement in company values. Sterling sneered. Which he hasn't, unless you count dating the help as a value. Actually, Kristen interjected, pulling up another slide. According to the bylaws, community service is defined as direct interaction with the public for the betterment of morale. I present Exhibit A, the lasagna bid. Raise $10,000 for charity. Exhibit B, William added. My shift at the bakery. I engaged with the community. I learned the value of $1. I failed to give correct change, but the effort was there. And Exhibit C, Kristen said, clicking to a photo of William in line at the dumpling shack. Cultural immersion. He ate street food without a fork. That's growth. The board was silent. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. But legally, it was bulletproof. This is a mockery, Eleanora shouted, standing up. You are turning this company into a joke. I'm turning it into a company with a pulse, Mother, William said, his voice dropping the humor. Grandfather didn't build this place to be a fortress for snobs. He built it to build things, to help people, and somewhere along the way between the galas and the mergers, we forgot that. He looked at Kristen. She reminded me. He turned to the board. So here's the deal. I'm staying. I'm vetoing the vote. And Sterling? He looked at his cousin, who was turning a lovely shade of purple. You're fired for destruction of company property. We have it on security cam, by the way. Dave rigged the basement cameras. It's on YouTube, currently trending. Sterling checked his phone. His face fell. I'll sue. Good luck, William said cheerfully. Our legal team is excellent. They optimized the shredder just for you. Sterling stormed out, followed by a wave of nervous laughter from the board. They knew a winner when they saw one. And William Covington, rumpled tuxedo and all, was definitely winning. Eleanora sat down slowly. She looked at her son. She looked at the girl in the maintenance hoodie. You really are your grandfather's grandson, she said, her voice devoid of its usual ice. It wasn't an apology, but it was a concession. Meeting adjourned, William announced. I need a nap, and a shower, and maybe another donut. The room cleared out fast. Soon it was just William and Kristen. He slumped into a chair, letting out a long breath. "We did it." "We did," Kristen said, closing her laptop. "You realize you just committed a hostile takeover of your own company using a PDF and a donut?" "Strategy," he grinned. "It's all about leverage." He looked at her. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a warm, bone-deep exhaustion. "Thank you. For coming back. For the backup." "I couldn't let you have all the fun," she said, walking over to him. "Plus," Dave insisted, "he wants a raise, by the way." "Done. Double it." He reached out and took her hand. "So, I'm still the CEO." "Looks like it. And you're still in archives." "For now," she said. "Though I might demand a window. The basement air is terrible for my skin." "I have a better idea," he said, pulling her closer. "How about a promotion? Director of Strategic Logic and Common Sense. I think we have a vacancy." "Is that a real job?" "I'll make it one. The pay is excellent, and the boss is very fond of you." She smiled, leaning against the conference table. "I don't know. I hear he's a bit of a handful, prone to grand gestures and bad food choices." "He's working on it," William promised. "He has a great teacher." He stood up, standing between her knees. He looked tired, messy, and absolutely perfect. "Can I kiss the director of Strategic Logic?" he asked. "I think that would be appropriate," she whispered. "For morale." He kissed her. It was a slow, sleepy, victorious kiss. It tasted of sugar glaze and victory. "Okay," he murmured against her lips. "I really need that nap. My couch is very comfortable. It has excellent lumbar support." "Are you inviting me to sleep on your office couch, Mr. Covington?" "I'm inviting you to nap," he corrected. "Strictly professional napping. We have a company to run." "Fine," she said, taking his hand. "But I get the side with the pillow." They walked into his office, leaving the door open. Let the world see. Let the board whisper. William Covington and Kristen Brooks were taking a nap, and for the first time in the history of Covington Enterprises, the CEO was exactly where he wanted to be. Life with William Covington was many things. Boring was not one of them. 6 months later, Kristen was officially the Director of Strategic Innovation, a title William invented because logic didn't fit on the business card. She had an office with a window. A big one, but the real adjustment was at home. William had practically moved into her apartment in Queens. He claimed his penthouse had bad vibes and insufficient taco proximity. He tried to be a low-maintenance boyfriend. He failed spectacularly. "William," Kristen said, walking into her kitchen one Tuesday evening, "why is there a robot in my sink?" William looked up from the manual he was reading. He was wearing an apron that said Grill Sergeant. "It's not a robot. It's a hydrostatic dish sanitizing unit. I imported it from Japan. It sings while it cleans." "I have a sponge," she said. "The sponge doesn't need a Wi-Fi connection." "The sponge is inefficient," he countered. "This unit saves 0.4 liters of water per cycle. It's an investment in our future. It's taking up my entire counter space. I can't even make toast." "I bought a new toaster too," he beamed. "It brands the weather forecast onto the bread." Kristen sighed, fighting a smile. "You are impossible. You know that?" "I am efficient," he corrected, kissing her cheek. "And I made dinner. Tacos. I used a blueprint." The tacos were surprisingly good, even if they were assembled with architectural precision. Their weekends were a mix of high and low culture. On Fridays, they went to black tie galas, where Kristen wore vintage dresses and made the board members laugh until they choked on their caviar. On Saturdays, William wore sweatpants and argued with the local bodega owner about the price of milk. "It's inflation, boss," the owner would yell. "It's price gouging," William would argue back, delighted. "I've run the numbers." He was happy. For the first time in his life, the Ice King had melted. He played his cello again, filling her small apartment with beautiful, mournful music that made the neighbors stop and listen. He stopped caring about what people thought and started caring about what made him feel alive. But there was one piece of unfinished business. One evening, William took Kristen back to the place where it all started, the grand ballroom. It was empty, dark, and silent. "Why are we here?" she asked, her voice echoing. "Is there a secret board meeting? Did Sterling try to break in again?" "No," he said, taking her hand. "I just wanted to check something." He led her to the balcony. The same spot. The moonlight was the same. The cold air was the same. "This is where I got stuck," she said, laughing. My dress, your jacket, the penguins. The penguin shuffle, he corrected. It was a very dignified migration strategy. He turned to her. He looked nervous. William Covington never looked nervous. Kristen, he said, you saved my company. You saved my sanity. You saved me from a life of boring dinners and people who only liked me for my portfolio. It was a team effort, she said softly. You did the yelling. I have a proposition, he said, reaching into his pocket. Another merger? She teased. A permanent acquisition, he said. He pulled out a small velvet box. But when he opened it, there wasn't a ring inside. There was a zipper. The same industrial-grade, heavy-duty zipper he had brought to the basement. But this one had been dipped in gold, and attached to the pull tab was a diamond, a massive, ridiculous, perfect diamond. Kristen stared at it. Her mouth fell open. William, is that? It's a tactical engagement device, he said, his eyes shining. Guaranteed not to snag, unless you want it to. He knelt down on one knee. Kristen Brooks, will you marry me? Will you be my partner, my penguin-in-chief, and the only person allowed to critique my filing system for the rest of my life? She looked at the golden zipper. She looked at the man on his knees, the billionaire who learned to love tacos and argue with bodega owners. You're an idiot, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. I'm your idiot, he said. Is that a yes? Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, you crazy, wonderful man. Yes. He stood up and kissed her. It was better than the balcony kiss. Better than the dumpling kiss. It was a promise. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Does this mean I have to go to more galas? She asked, resting her head on his chest. Only if we can sneak out early, he promised. I know a great dumpling place that stays open late. Deal, she said. They walked out of the ballroom, hand in hand. The zipper on her dress stayed perfectly fine. But just in case, William kept his arm around her waist, for structural support. The wedding of William Covington and Kristen Brooks was the social event of the season, mostly because no one knew what to expect. The invitations were engraved on recycled cardboard. The dress code was black tie optional, dancing shoes mandatory. It was held in the Covington Gardens, but instead of string quartets and ice sculptures, there was a taco truck parked next to the fountain and a karaoke machine on the stage. Eleanora Covington sat in the front row, wearing a hat so large it could have its own zip code. She looked like she was attending a funeral for her dignity. Smile, mother, William whispered as he stood at the altar. It's a celebration. There's a taco truck on the lawn, William, she hissed. The gardener is weeping. He's weeping with joy, William corrected. Those tacos are excellent. Then the music started. Not Wagner, not Pachelbel. It was an orchestral version of Bohemian Rhapsody. Kristen walked down the aisle. She wasn't wearing white. She was wearing a shimmering, pale blue dress that reminded William of the night on the balcony. She looked radiant, happy, and completely herself. Dave from maintenance was walking her down the aisle, beaming in a rented tux that was 2 sizes too big. When she reached him, William felt like his heart might explode. Hi, she whispered. Hi, he said. Nice dress. Zipper functioning correctly? So far, she winked. But the night is young. The vows were short and sweet. William promised to never optimize her closet again. Kristen promised to let him win at least one argument a year. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the cheers were deafening. Even the board members were clapping, possibly because they were 3 margaritas deep. The reception was a blur of joy. William sang karaoke, badly. Kristen danced with the CFO. Eleanora was seen eating a churro, looking confused but not entirely unhappy. Late that night, as the party wound down, William and Kristen sat on the edge of the fountain, their feet dangling in the water. We did it, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. We survived, he corrected, kissing her hair. And we didn't even have to fire anyone. The night isn't over yet, she teased. Sterling might try to crash the cake cutting. Let him try, William said. I have Dave on standby with a garden hose. He looked at his wife, his partner, his best friend. He thought about the lonely, cold life he had before her. The empty penthouse, the silent dinners. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For getting stuck, he said. For snagging your zipper on my jacket and refusing to let go. I was trying to let go, she laughed. You were the one with the fuzzy wool. Best wool I ever bought, he said. He pulled her into a kiss right there in the fountain, under the stars and the smell of tacos. It was messy, it was loud, and it was perfect. As they walked back toward the party, ready to start their life together, William checked his pocket. He still had the old, broken zipper from that first night. He kept it as a reminder that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you don't plan for. The glitches, the snags, the moments where you get stuck and realize you never want to leave. What did you think of the story of William and Kristen? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate their journey from the basement to the boardroom? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And for everyone who has stayed with us until the very end, who believes that love is worth fighting for, even if it involves a little awkwardness, please comment Tactical Zipper. We are so grateful to share these stories with you. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more narratives that will change the world.